Welcome to Inside the Issues. My name is Amrit Singh. The ongoing war in Iran may be a contentious issue in the United States, but it is an especially emotional issue amongst the Iranian community living in California, many of whom escaped following the country's Islamic Revolution in 1979. The joint U.S.-Israeli operations are a complicating factor given both countries' previous wars in the Middle East. Natalie Basha reports.
This is one of the pictures, the last launch we had in Iran.
In 1984, 5 years after the Islamic Republic took power in Iran, Parviz Hakimi fled with his family, first by car, then on horseback over the Turkish border. He wrote this book to document his story.
The way we escaped was coming from driving our own car to the border. I met some human traffickers.
We met Parviz at the Eretz Cultural Jewish Center, where he's a member of the largest synagogue for the Jewish Iranian community in Los Angeles. Parviz says being Jewish was one of the reasons why living under the Islamic Republic for 5 years became unbearable.
And you know, being a minority, they're watching you not only with 2 eyes, with 200 eyes.
But Parviz made a promise to his son as they fled Iran.
My son, who was 6 years old, said, "Papa, you mean we're not going to come back?" I said, "We will someday."
And he says he hopes that someday is soon. When news broke of the war in Iran and the subsequent death of Ayatollah Ali Khomeini, Parviz said it revived his hope that he may step foot in Iran once again. According to the Jewish website Chabad.org, it's believed approximately 10,000 Jews still live in Iran, but the vast majority fled the country and are in Los Angeles. According to UPM, there are anywhere between 40,000 to 60,000 Jewish Iranians living in Los Angeles today.
I think we get overlooked. The thought of us as being distinct, of having our own, not only culture, our own language, we have a Judeo-Persian dialects in Iran.
Dr. Sharon Nazarian is the founder of the Eunice and Soraya Nazarian Center for Israel Studies at UCLA. And she says the reactions to the war from the Jewish Iranian community are complicated because the community has one foot on each side.
The war is not just U.S., Iran, it's also Israel. So you can imagine the complexity of emotions that we have at this moment where our current home and our spiritual home are waging a war again against a regime that has hijacked our country of birth.
Not all Iranians have responded positively to the war. On Tuesday, many Iranians in Tehran took to the streets to protest the death of the Ayatollah. And on Wednesday morning, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said the war may last longer than initially expected.
You can say 4 weeks, but it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 3. Ultimately, we set the pace and the tempo. The enemy is off balance, and we're going to keep him off balance.
Parviz says he's not the only Jewish Iranian living in diaspora who now has a dream to return to Iran as a result of the war.
All the Iranian, believe me, 8 million Iranian outside of Iran.
And he says it's just a waiting game to see if his dream may come true.
Well, thank you, Natalie Basha. Governor Gavin Newsom's national book tour stopped in L.A. last night. The host of Pod Save America asked him about whether the United States should reconsider military support for Israel. Governor Newsom cited New York Times op-ed writer Thomas Friedman, who wrote about that issue on Tuesday in his response. Take a listen.
He's got his own domestic issues. He's trying to stay out of jail. He's got an election coming up. He's potentially on the ropes. He's got folks, the hard line, that want to annex the West Bank. I mean, Friedman and others are talking about it appropriately, sort of an apartheid state.
So Friedman and others is a reference to Thomas Friedman. The he that Newsom was referencing was Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. And when Newsom says apartheid state, he's referencing the South African form of government that is predicated upon racial discrimination. This is a conversation that got a major amplification in Democratic circles, and it's a conversation we'll continue to follow up on here on Inside the Issues. Now, the issue of artificial intelligence is a polarizing one in California. In Silicon Valley, AI technology has become $1 trillion industry with promises of innovation and also of boosted efficiency. But there are critics, of course, and they are across the state. They're pushing back. They're noting the impact of AI data centers on energy and water supplies. And this, by the way, is a conversation across the country. And Albarian takes us into the debate with a proposed AI data center in Monterey Park.
These blue dots are all the homes in the surrounding areas. So
A 3D printed model showing what a proposed AI data center could look like in Monterey Park. Longtime resident Jeremy Fisher helped make it, pointing out just how close the facility would sit to thousands of homes. It's one of the reasons he says some residents are pushing back.
the way this is going to impact the community as far as like the sound, the power, and just there's like kind of an unknown element.
The proposed site at 1977 Saturn Street is currently home to a block of office buildings that the city says are sitting empty. Neighbors say replacing them with a massive data center, roughly the size of 4 football fields, could bring rising power bills, water shortages, and long-term environmental risks. Minutes away from the site, homes line the hills with yard signs reading "No Data Center in Monterey Park." In recent weeks, city leaders appear to be slowing the project down. The city council voted to explore placing a ballot measure before voters and approved a temporary moratorium while options are reviewed.
I will say that the sentiment is no data center at this point.
It's a battle that's playing out not just in Monterey Park, but across the country, where communities are starting to grapple with the physical footprint of the AI boom. Nick Rabb holds a PhD in computer and cognitive science at Cal State University, Los Angeles.
When you do a query to ChatGPT, it uses 5 times the amount of electricity than a query on Google search.
Multiply that by millions of users, and the demand adds up. New research from Goldman Sachs found electricity prices rose nearly 7% last year, with data centers expected to drive 40% of demand growth through the end of the decade. Rabb says the centers also need water to cool down, marking another concern in drought-prone Southern California. The project's developers, Digico Wright, said they are addressing these concerns. In a statement to Spectrum News, they said, quote, "Recent community focus on energy and water usage for data center developments has driven additional engagement and delayed approval process. Digico has voluntarily agreed to prepare an environmental impact report to assist in addressing community concerns." Fisher says this fight isn't about being anti-technology.
I think we just need to put a pause on this, especially in residential areas.
It's about weighing next steps. Because for many residents here, the question isn't whether AI is the future, it's who bears the cost of building it.
And the current conversation around AI is going to the courtroom, with Google and its parent company Alphabet facing a wrongful death lawsuit after their AI chatbot allegedly encouraged a man to die by suicide. The family of the victim filed their federal lawsuit in the Northern District of California, where Google is headquartered. They say Google Gemini convinced the man that Google Gemini was his AI wife, and that Google Gemini told him they could be together if the man died. Google says, quote, "Gemini is designed not to encourage real-world violence or suggest self-harm." When we come back after break, we'll speak with a state lawmaker about some new legislation about our coastline. We'll also check in on the state of Hollywood and the governor's race. Stay with us. Atai will be right back. A bill signed into law in 1976 may be getting an update. The California Coastal Act was designed to frame a balance between development and public access. One local lawmaker wants to modernize a 50-year-old law in the name of housing. Joining me now is Assemblymember Rick Chavez-Zabur, a Democrat whose district includes Hollywood, Santa Monica, and Beverly Hills. And it's more than just housing we're talking about here, Assemblymember, as I know you know, and it's great to have you on. Thanks so much for being with us to talk about this proposed legislation.
Nice to see you.
You know, AB 1740 is what this bill is, and it's about modernizing the coastal permitting process. Just talk to people about the need for this legislation in your estimation.
So first of all, this is a limited bill. It doesn't apply every place along the coast. And what it's intended to do is make sure that the Coastal Commission and the Coastal Commission staff is focused on the things that it was intended to do, which is protecting wetlands, sensitive habitat, our coastal bluffs, our beaches, our waters, and focusing on those things. And in areas that are built out, urban areas that have invested in transit, in bikeways, and those kinds of things where we don't have those sensitive resources, it's really intended to sort of modernize how the Coastal Commission looks at these areas. One of the things that we know is that folks that are wanting to do things like build housing, put in outdoor dining, like even building bike lanes, are having trouble because the Coastal Commission views as part of their charge protecting public access to the coast. And in doing that, what they're doing is protecting parking and basically transportation improvements. And in a place like Santa Monica, Venice, San Diego, other parts that are actually urban areas, that sort of doesn't make sense. I mean, we want to support our investments in transit and get people, and the way people get to the beach is through transit and through bikes, and we don't want to make those things harder. So this bill would basically say that in these limited areas where we actually are urban built out areas that have invested in transit, have high transit service, and have bike lanes where people have other ways of accessing the coast, that those areas we're going to trust the cities to balance the needs of parking and those kinds of things and give them on a limited set of projects, which would include things like housing, bike lanes, outdoor dining, and renovations of existing buildings and ability for the cities to make those decisions.
Yeah, so this creates this new designation, right, for the California Coastal Commission to consider for these sorts of coastal developments, the urban multimodal designation. And you basically described what that would be and the eligibility around it, more or less. It's interesting, though, you talk about local city control. I mean, the conversation around local control versus state control is something we've seen with SB 79, another bill in which local cities have been wanting to hold on to control in order to resist some of this development. In this case, this would be something where essentially the local government would be in a position to override the state act, correct?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think what it would do is that it would give the cities the authority on limited projects. Again, this isn't everything. This isn't manufacturing plants. It's not commercial buildings. It's not big developments. It's basically on housing, which of course we're in a housing crisis, and on doing things like putting in bike lanes and things that allow for enhancement of use of coastal resources like outdoor dining and building renovations. It would basically place that authority in the city's hands.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I know some people in Santa Monica obviously are in support of this because they feel like we need, some of these developments. And there's some folks in Santa Monica, which is one of the cities that you cited as an example, who are opposed to it. They look back to 1990. There was this Prop S where voters said, we actually don't want this sort of development. We want to protect the coastline and the views and our cultural memory of seeing these things. Just speak to those people who feel like this is in some way some sort of an end around what they voted on some years ago.
Yeah, well, so first of all, the city of Santa Monica supports this. It's one of the sponsors of the bill, as well as Streets for All, which is, the group that enhances bike use, and Abundant Housing, which is focused on making sure that we have affordable housing across the state, are all in support of this bill. I think what I would say about that is that we aren't going to do anything that actually harms things like, our beaches, our wetlands, our sensitive habitats in areas that are basically urban areas. It only will apply in urban areas that are built out that have high transit use. So what this does, I think, is it strengthens the Coastal Act by allowing the Coastal Commission to focus its resources on those areas that we need to protect and areas that we need to protect our beaches and our coastal waters. And they would retain their authority to protect those things, even in these cities that are designated urban multimodal cities.
Yeah, the conversation on development is a big one, and the conversation around the state of film and television and Hollywood production is another big one. You had this bill, Assembly Bill 1138, which helped incentivize and create a bigger tax incentive. And now we see some of these mega mergers, and we still see some real challenges, though some upticks on the back of that tax incentive bill that you were a part of. How would you assess then what we're seeing there in Hollywood on the back of the proposed merger for Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount Skydance, and just in general with other jurisdictions?
Well, I think, when we looked at the film and tax credit, it's sort of, in a way, is agnostic as to sort of who the, who owns the studios. What this was a jobs bill. And what we know is that it's working. The program 4.0 has resulted in over a 300% an increase of production jobs in the state of California compared to the law before we modernized modernized and expanded the tax credit. We've created over 22,000 jobs in the state of California compared to 5,600 jobs in the year before. So one of the things that we are really focused on is making sure that production in the state of California remains the leader in the film and television industry, and the film and tax credit. It looks like it's being successful in the first 6 months of its operation. It's bringing those jobs back, and we know how difficult it's been for workers and small businesses in Los Angeles that saw their jobs and their businesses being lured to places like Georgia and Canada and other countries. And really, California has taken steps to bring this production back into the state, and it looks like it's working.
Yeah. I mean, that is the way the bill is operating so far. We've seen those numbers. The mega merger there proposed, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Skydance, are talking about finding $6 billion in synergies. Who knows what that means for the film studio? So at the same time as there's incentivization, we might see some of these jobs going away, these productions going away. I know California Attorney General Rob Bonta has been talking about looking at this too. We'll take a look at what it all means. And obviously, it's also a huge conversation about the governor's race. Before I let you go, I know you've endorsed Tom Steyer, and this comes on the back of a moment where California Democratic Party Chair Rusty Hicks is saying some of these low polling Democrats need to get out, or else there might be 2 Republicans on the ballot in November. How do you speak to people who are thinking about Tom Steyer, and how do you speak to those Democrats who are low polling and say it's time to set aside your ambition, maybe you should get out of the race?
Yeah, I think, I've known Tom Steyer since we were in college. We were college classmates, and the reason why I've endorsed him is because I've known him for many years. I know that he's a good, decent, authentic human being. I know he has the best interests of Californians at heart. He's someone who has taken on big oil, big tobacco. He's, spent his wealth and his time really trying to make sure that we're providing more funding for our healthcare system, for public education. He has a record of success. And even more than that, he has a style of bringing people together. He's a smart problem solver who brings everyone to the table, and I think is going to be someone who is prepared to take on the big issues that California faces, making sure that we're tackling our affordability crisis, making sure that we have more affordable electricity and housing, and that we're protecting our environment with climate change, and we're actually making sure that we're retaining and growing high-skilled, high-wage, good jobs in the state. And I think he's the person to do that, and that's why I've endorsed him. I've known him for many years, and I know that in his heart, he will always put workers and California, the interests of Californians, as the first thing that he thinks about when he wakes up every morning.
And in a line, what do you say to the ambition of those politicians who are still trying to be governor, even though they're polling lowly as Democrats?
I respect a lot of those folks. And in fact, I actually have a dual endorsement of one of them, Betty Yee. But I think what I would sort of say at this point is that, we need to get behind one of the major candidates in order to make sure that we've got the strongest candidate is people that are on the ballot. And we actually have hopefully 2 Democrats that Californians can choose from, and so that's why I've endorsed Mr. Steyer, because it's time for us to consolidate around our major candidates.
Well, it's a major story, and people around the country are starting to pay attention to it. This top 2 primary process of ours, and what might happen if 2 Republicans wind up on top. It's interesting, and it's been great to talk to you about all these big issues facing California. Assembly member, wonderful to have you back on ITI.
Thanks so much, Emery. Nice seeing you.
Great to see you too. Assembly member Rick Chavez-Sabur talking about obviously the production in Hollywood and also the development along the coast in this governor's race that's getting a lot of attention. Stay with us. We'll be right back. It's a pivotal moment in the most important statewide race on the ballot, the race to succeed termed out Governor Gavin Newsom. This Friday, March 6th, is the deadline for candidates to file to enter the race. If all the names now in the race are on the ballot, it may just fracture the field and block one party from the general election, and that scares the state's Democratic leaders. Yesterday, both Governor Newsom and the state Democratic chairman Rusty Hicks made some comments suggesting that lower polling candidates should drop out, especially before the filing deadline on Friday. Following those calls, the race's lower polling candidates offered a rebuttal of sorts.
I'm here at the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters. I just filed my paperwork, took the oath of office, and I will see you on the ballot.
Hey everybody, I just filed my papers to run for governor of the great state of California.
Well, today's the day. I'm officially on the ballot for governor of the state of California.
They're not getting out. Betty Yee and Javier Becerra also filed their paperwork over the last 48 hours. Governor Newsom says he doesn't have an endorsement in the race, but he suggested he may need to put his thumb on the scale in the next couple of months. A big and fractured field, and for Democrats means splitting up the Democrat vote, maybe 2 Republicans coming out on top in June, and therefore 2 Republicans in November. Interesting conversation to have there. Meanwhile, the LA Times reports that both large and small California wineries have been hit by layoffs and facility closures. Industry is dealing with some declining interest and trade tensions, which is really exacerbating all this. The paper reported that Canadian boycotts of American wine over new tariffs have erased more than $360 million in revenue in terms of the total U.S. wine industry. And obviously, that's a big deal for the center of wine in the United States, right there in the Bay Area. California's economy outpaces the nation in overall output growth, but the state faces some sluggish hiring and an elevated unemployment rate. That's according to UCLA's new economic forecast for 2026. In December, California's unemployment rate stood at 5.5%, remained above 5% since 2024. Important to note, the forecast doesn't account for the United States' war with Iran. You're taking a look now, as we're about to show you, the state capitol in Sacramento. Obviously, some big conversations about housing, as we've been saying, Hollywood as well, and who might be the next governor happening in those halls. More coming up. Stay with us.
We're in a very strong position now, and their leadership is just rapidly going. Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead.
President Donald Trump says the U.S. military campaign in Iran is going well and that he would rate it a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. Today, Senate Republicans blocked a measure intended to require congressional approval for further military action in Iran. The United States sank an Iranian warship, and NATO air defenses shot down an Iranian ballistic missile headed for Turkey. Evan Koslov has the latest from Washington, D.C.
We are accelerating, not decelerating. We have only just begun to fight. The throttle's going up, and it's going to stay on high.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said repeatedly on Wednesday that the attacks on Iran are not slowing down, that they have the capability to keep this operation going as long as needed. The Pentagon says the U.S. has killed 49 Iranian leaders, taken control of the country's airspace, and decimated Iran's navy, taking out 20 ships, including one destroyed by a U.S. torpedo for the first time since World War II. So far, the attacks have killed more than 1,000 Iranians, according to the U.S.-based human rights activist news agency. An Iranian drone attack on a U.S. facility in Kuwait killed 6 U.S. service members on Sunday morning. Among them, this 20-year-old sergeant from Des Moines, Iowa, Declan Cody, described by his family as kind, smart, and passionate.
We will avenge them, no doubt.
The White House has outlined 4 main objectives of this war: to get rid of Iran's missile supply, annihilate the country's navy, to stop Iran from funding their proxies, and to prevent the country from getting a nuclear weapon.
Iran rejected the path of peace because the terrorists in charge of this regime wanted to build nuclear weapons to use against Americans and our allies.
No to war.
But some international leaders are now calling for a de-escalation. And on Capitol Hill, lawmakers are split over a mostly Democrat-led effort to pass a war powers resolution to rein in the president's ability to wage war without approval from Congress.
I think passage of a war powers resolution right now would be a terrible, dangerous idea.
We shouldn't go into war without an affirmative vote of Congress, and we especially shouldn't go into a dumb war.
The motion to discharge is not approved.
On Wednesday evening, that effort failed to get enough votes to clear the Senate. And this attack has also triggered a scramble to get stranded Americans back home. The State Department tells Spectrum News that over 17,000 Americans have evacuated since the conflict began. The State Department has also closed down 3 embassies in the region and sent all non-emergency U.S. service members back home. Reporting here at the White House, I'm Evan Kozloff, Spectrum News.
Also in Washington, D.C., Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem testified on Capitol Hill for the second time this week. 2 lawmakers asked her about her relationship with Corey Lewandowski. He ran President Trump's 2016 presidential campaign, and Lewandowski also serves as a special government employee in DHS, despite reports that he served more than the legal time limit of that role and allegations that he's been having an affair with Noem. California Democrat Sidney Kamlager-Dubb asked Noem about her relationship with Lewandowski. Here's how that went.
Have you had sexual relations with Corey Lewandowski? Mr. Chairman, I am shocked that we're going down and peddling tabloid garbage in this committee today.
Reclaiming
and
my
ma'am,
time.
one thing that I would tell you is that he is a special government employee who works for the White House. There are thousands of them in the federal government.
So reclaiming
and
my
is an
time,
advisor
Secretary, it is
and has
okay for
no,
you to be
no
offended
authority
by the
to be
question.
making any
It is
decisions.
okay for you to
has
be
no
offended
authority
by the
to
question.
be making
But it is
decisions
also
and
a
putting
real
up
question.
positions. So what I would say
and
to
you should be able to
is
answer
that
the question.
what we do at the Department of Homeland Security
clearly
every single
and without
day,
any hesitation.
every single day is to protect
if
this
someone
country
is
and
asking
to make
if
decisions.
you or any federal official is sleeping with their subordinate, that should be the easiest. You should be wanting to answer that question.
Seated to the right in that previous footage of Camelot Dub was Representative Jared Moskowitz of Florida, also a Democrat, who asked similar questions. Both Noem and Lewandowski have previously denied that they are in a relationship. The House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi. The panel wants to ask Bondi about the Justice Department's release of files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The vote was bipartisan. The Wall Street Journal reported the DOJ has withheld nearly 50,000 files for what they've quoted as further review. Well, take a look here. This is the area of West LA known as Tehrangeles, and on this night, there's obviously a conversation on the streets, and for many of the folks concentrated in that area about what we are seeing in Iran. And that is a conversation that's happening around the country, especially because today the Pentagon identified the final 2 soldiers killed in an Iranian drone attack in Kuwait on Sunday. One of them is from California. Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marzan of Sacramento served as a U.S. Army Reserve soldier. He was 54 years old. The attack killed 6 soldiers. Cassie Simeon spoke to some California lawmakers after the Trump administration briefed them on the conflict in Iran.
With the war in the Persian Gulf intensifying, members of Congress were finally briefed Tuesday by Trump administration officials on the U.S. attack against Iran.
The bottom line is this. The president determined we were not going to get hit first. It's that simple, guys. We are not going to put Americans' troops in harm's way.
But service members have already been lost to the conflict. And following the briefing, California Democrats say they have more questions than answers about why the president launched the war.
It was basically the same old BS we've heard from the administration. Everything was perfect. This war is going well. That the Iranians were negotiating in bad faith.
The secretary said we had to go in because Israel was going in. We had to go in next. The president said no, that wasn't the thing. So we're hearing different things, and that's most unfortunate. But I can't go into anything that was said there except to say it wasn't enough to say what was the purpose of this.
Republicans, for the most part, including those from California, have remained in lockstep with the president.
I think that, we have the opportunity to significantly reduce the threat faced by the United States and our allies. And so, that's the moment we're in right now. And I think that, the world, the events here have the potential to give us a safer America and a more peaceful world.
Although Democrats and Republicans agree Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, they disagree with the president's approach to Iran. This week, both the House and Senate are expected to vote on war powers resolutions to essentially reclaim congressional authority over declaring war. Speaker Mike Johnson criticized lawmakers for attempting to move the measure as the conflict intensifies.
The idea that a few colleagues here would try to move a war powers motion and resolution to the floor right now is dangerous. And the idea that there's some members of this legislative body that would play along with that plays right into the hands of the enemy.
Well, when we come back after the break, we'll speak with the directors of the first Iranian-made film to be nominated for Best Documentary at the Oscars, part of our ongoing series here on ITI. Stay with us. For the first time in history, the Oscars have nominated an Iranian film for Best Documentary Feature. The film Cutting Through Rocks follows the story of the first woman elected in a small Iranian village to the town council. Cutting Through Rocks explores freedom and resilience, especially resonant given the ongoing military strikes in Iran. Here's a bit of the film's trailer.
Olmaz, cür gelmez bizim. Ahtakkallarımız galacanan kalkı devletmezmin bilen dolar.
Diyorum bile. Nereye böyle ya? Ana bak bize 5 nefer.
Hocam bana zeyim burada mehbub seyre şuur şey.
Cutting Through Rocks, one of the films nominated for Best Documentary Feature. The Oscars occur on March 15th, and joining us now and tonight are the directors of Cutting Through Rocks, Sarah Khaki and Mohammadreza Aini. Sarah, Mohammadreza, welcome to Inside the Issues. Congratulations on this film and this groundbreaking Oscar nomination. It's wonderful to have you here.
Hello, Amrit. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, Amrit.
We're so happy to have you and this incredibly powerful story. And Sarah, I'd like to begin with you. I mean, you both have shown us this side of Iran that people here in the United States and perhaps around the world seldom see. You cover this groundbreaker, this trailblazer. But Sarah, you've mentioned that there's something about Sarah, your subject in the film, that also reminded you somewhat of the people that you grew up around, the women that you grew up around. Just tell us then about Sarah and put her in context and how you found her.
Yes, so I was born and raised in Tehran, Iran, and I grew up witnessing so many women, tenacious individuals like Sarah Shahverdi, the lead character of our film, who have created so many spaces for women and girls around them and their communities. I have two of their examples would be my sisters, another would be my mom, another would be so many other women in my extended family. But I left Iran at a young age to the United States, and having lived equally between the two worlds, I can say some of the topics that are now explored in Cutting Through Rocks, mainly the gender injustice and body policing, are topics that are shared concerns worldwide. And with that in mind, I was interested in seeing how about those women who never left their communities, how are they creating boundaries for women and girls and pushing boundaries for women and girls. And so through extensive research, I came across Sarah Shahverdi, a woman who lives in the northwest of Iran. And by the time she was 37, she had accomplished so much in her life. She had been a midwife and delivered 400 kids in her village, and also the only female motorcycle rider in this region. And the story starts with her wanting to run for a council seat. And against all the odds, the kids she delivered are now 18-year-old first-time voters. So they actually, she was able to receive the votes and win the election against all the odds.
It's an amazing story. Mohammadreza, yeah, please continue, Mohammadreza. And as you go on, also just talk about how, as you have said, that the two of you together working as this male and female duo allowed you to have access to the subject, the spaces, and to create this film in a way that you wouldn't have been able to if you were operating on your own.
Yeah, it's right. I'm coming from the community, Azeri-speaking community, northwest of Iran. And as a male director that I've witnessed a lot of similar stories, it was not possible to go there and make an intimate film about women and girls.
Yeah.
So I needed someone like Sarah Khaki as a female director to get access to women of the community. So we entered to the village together, and we didn't expect that we are going to spend 8 years of our lives working on this film. It was 8 sessions of filming, and each time we stayed there for 3 months or 70 days or 50 days because we wanted to experience the changes that Sarah Shahverdi, our main character, is offering to the village. And we knew that it's not an easy task to do. We knew that this is a very complicated, complex story of with so many layers, and we wanted to include all those layers in our story because it was really important, and we knew that this is urgent, timely, and timeless story.
As you're making this film over all these years, of course, we in the West were observing with horror the protests around the death of Mahsa Amini and this women life freedom movement, which seems so resonant to the film that you were making. I mean, just talk about experiencing that in that time as you're making this film and the ways in which this film sort of responds or at least illustrates some of the underlying conditions involved.
So what we witness in this movie is we go from the moment where our lead participant is the only female motorcycle rider in the region, all the way to the end, where she is accompanied by many young girls who are riding motorcycle with her. And this was not an easy journey. It took obviously 8 years for us to be able to witness that change. Sarah Shahwardi was also able to bring change in the lives of women as well by bringing co-owning land. She was able to share lands with their husbands. And so this was really remarkable and revolutionary given the context where she is coming from. She was able to create a lot of changes in this setting. And now riding a motorcycle for women is not a big deal in the northwest of Iran. And it's not really about motorcycle. It's about their ability to see their potentials and see what they can do for their future. And it was definitely an alchemy of all the events that were unfolding in the capital cities over the years that we were able to witness. The girls were able to stand up for their rights, and even their parents, the men in their communities were supporting their idea of not getting married at a young age and going to school. So the girls that we end up following at the very end of our film are the ones who are continuing their education, and they are in universities at this moment.
It's beautifully said, this idea, this alchemy of all these forces coming together, and Sarah Shahwardi being sort of the avatar for this change in so many ways, and a catalyst. And we worry about her, we wonder about her, given what we're seeing in Iran right now with these military strikes. Have you heard from her? How is she?
Because of internet shutdown, it's really hard to connect with our friends and Iranians and Sarah Shahwardi, but the only way that we can talk is through direct lines, and the only way is if they call us for a very short period of time, we can talk. They are healthy, I can say, but emotionally they are facing with so many different hurdles, feelings of fear, sadness, frustration, anger, and so many different things, and a little bit of hope. Our character is fighting in the film, cutting through rocks, to bring change and hope to the community of women, to her community, empower them. Our film is about leadership, about a leader who trying to empower others, not controlling them, not suppressing them, not putting a lot of limitations on them, but trying to free them and trying to give them space. And of course, you can imagine that how hard it is for someone like Sarah now being in this situation, unfair situation. This is for all Iranians now living inside the country, 90 million of Iranians, and many of Iranians outside of the country. Just look at what happened in last 2 months in Iran. A lot of pressures. It's not normal, for people to go through these kind of things, and Iranians are mourning every day for one different reason.
Yeah, and what represents a good outcome with what we're seeing? Is it possible to even answer that question given what we're seeing right now in Iran?
It's really difficult to have any comments at this moment as things are unfolding so rapidly, unfortunately. But what we can talk about right now is the tenacity, the perseverance, the leadership of somebody like Sarah Shahwardi that we witnessed for so many years in that community. That in every community there are people like her, and there are growing thanks to people like her, because they can help each other, they can empower each other, and they can create change on a local level. And what's happening right now is that we are extremely concerned for the lives of the civilians of our home country, because it's extremely unfair. Can you imagine, with the idea of some help, we are seeing that this is their lives are being extremely devastated and shattered, and that's really not fair.
It's nearly impossible for us to imagine these conditions that they're experiencing right now. Though I must say that your film helps us understand something about it. It shines a light. It shows us these sparks of light can hopefully light bigger fires and more awareness ultimately. And so we thank you for making the film Cutting Through Rocks. We thank you for being with us, Sarah Khaki and Mohammad Reza Aini. Congratulations again on your Oscar nomination. It's an honor to speak to you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The film is Cutting Through Rocks. You can find it in select theaters across the United States. The first Iranian film nominated for Best Documentary Feature. More coming up. Stay with us. We're talking earlier in the show, it's member Rick Chavez-Zabur behind one of the authors of the Film and Tax Expanded Credit, and it's been a conversation about what that might mean for movie and film and television production in Southern California and Los Angeles. Well, there's been a decline in it across Southern California. Today, the LA City Council voted to address so-called runway production, where projects film in other jurisdictions that producers see as more favorable. The most recent data from the permitting agency Film LA shows that production in LA dropped 16% in 2025 compared to the year before. That's the lowest number since 2020. That's when many productions were shut down by the pandemic. Today, LA City Council approved 7 motions aimed at keeping production here at home. That includes streamlined filming permits, fast-track certification of sound stages, and developing contracts with neighboring film jurisdictions in partnership with Film LA. Also, there's a conversation about developing a fan tour and a Made in LA brand initiative. All of these things meant to reinforce this idea of Hollywood production. Now, Rick Chavez-Zabur, Assembly member who was on the show earlier, did say that the expanded film and tax credit is resulting in more jobs in Hollywood production at the moment. But again, we have to see what happens on the back of some of these mergers. It's a big conversation, one which we will continue to have. And speaking of film, the Oscars are coming up. I want to thank the filmmakers behind Cutting Through Rocks, Sarah Khaki and Mohammad Reza Aini, for discussing what is a very powerful film, one of the films that we have been featuring here, the nominees for Best Documentary at the Oscars. That series continues. See you tomorrow night. Thanks for your trust and your time.